Welcome to the Rookie American podcast. I'm your girl, Lisette Carter, and I am really excited to have someone on today who is a woman, wife, mom, business owner. She is a healthcare provider, and now she is the Republican primary winner for the 2nd Congressional District, which is here in Massachusetts, Tracy Lovvorn. Welcome, Tracy.
Hi, thank you for having me so much. I'm excited.
So I look up to you a lot because we kind of believe the same things. We believe the same things. And it's so great to have somebody that is a woman that is stepping up and that is doing something about these issues that we have today that a lot of conservative women aren't really, or especially minorities, don't really come forward with, immediately. Takes them some time. So I'm really excited to talk to you and what, your plans are for Massachusetts and, for the nation. But yes, let's get started on what's your background? Tell us your background.
I'm a physical therapist. Like you said, I'm a wife first, a mother. I have 2 boys. They're older now. They're up there. They're 21 and 23. My oldest just graduated from UMass Amherst. So that was it was hard. He graduated during the coronavirus and didn't have much of a big celebration afterwards. But yeah, moving right along. And I'm a physical therapist. I've worked in corporate rehab for a long time, kind of traveled around different states to states, doing a lot of Medicare compliance, regulatory things. But most recently, I'm a small business owner. I have a small little outpatient physical therapy clinic here in Grafton that we opened about 3 years ago. And that's what I do.
Nice. Now, I know that I had read about some of the Medicare fraud that you had discovered, and it actually impacted your career, which may have been bad, but turned out for the better. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. It's when I was working in more of a corporate environment, like I said, I was kind of in charge of Medicare and oversight, making sure we were in regulatory compliance, billing correctly and taking care of the patients the way we should have. And that was in skilled nursing facilities. So that was a lot of our elderly patients. And I started working for a company the company themselves is actually a Canadian company that owned about between 200 and 300 facilities throughout the United States. And at the time I was working down as a regional director in Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, Virginia, that area. And I had discovered that they were doing things wrong. They were, what they were doing was not right. They were actually abusing patients as well as committing Medicare fraud. And to commit fraud, it has to be purposeful. And so when I first discovered it, I was really hoping that it was more accidental, that the company was not aware of it. So I brought it to their attention, really excited to try to fix it, to make things better. And when I went to try to fix things, they actually retaliated against me and they fired me. And that was hard. It was a big job. I had moved all the way across the country to do the job, and to get fired for trying to do the right thing was really bad. So I knew I was right, and I knew what they were doing was very, very wrong. And so I worked really hard to try to figure out what I could do to make that better. And it was a long process. This started in 2009. It took me a while to search out and try to find, different lawyers and attorneys that could actually help me to understand what I was trying to do. And I actually ended up working with the federal government. I worked with the Office of Inspector General and the Department of Health and Human Services. I worked with the U.S. Attorney General's office and Assistant U.S. Attorney General's office in Philadelphia. And it took 4 years of an investigation to work on this with them, to try to help them figure out what I was seeing. And we did it. We won the The company never really admitted to doing anything wrong, but they did settle the case. Like I said, they were a Canadian company, and they divested all their facilities here in the United States. They moved back to Canada. They're no longer committing fraud. They're no more abusing, our elderly residents here in the States. And more importantly, once I was able to work hard and establish that case, it set a precedent so that other businesses that were doing the same thing, other companies, they started falling in line. And from what I did, I was able, since then, hundreds of millions of dollars have been returned to the Medicare Trust Fund. And it's really changed the way the industry is governed as far as how physical therapy in rehab centers and skilled nursing, how it's billed for, how it's policed, and how it's implemented. And I'm super proud of that. I wouldn't have changed that for the world, but it's made it hard because now I tried to find another job, and nobody wants to hire a squealer, a whistleblower, so to speak.
Right.
So you Google my name and it comes up, and I saw it as a wonderful thing. I would not change it, but I could no longer really work in corporate rehab any longer. So thank goodness I'm a physical therapist. I went back to what I know, and now I'm working as a physical therapist, and I get to help my neighbors every single day. So, God does things for certain reasons, puts certain people in positions at a certain time in order to accomplish things. And I really feel like I was put in that position at that time to do exactly what I've done.
So that's an incredible testimony. I mean, you're keeping companies accountable, which is something that really needs to be done across the board in Congress. People need to be held accountable.
When I say putting somebody in a position to accomplish something, honestly, that's what brings me here today talking to you about Congress, because we need to hold our Congress accountable. Our congressional members, especially ones that have been there 20, 30, 40 years, that are no longer representing us, that are no longer doing anything, really just arguing and fighting and making a whole lot of money. These congressional members are supposed to be public servants. It's supposed to be a sacrifice to go down there and represent us, but somehow they go down there and they're not making very much money, and within a few years they're multimillionaires. What's happening? There's a lot of the same fraud, waste, and abuse that I fought in that corporate land. That's going on with our Congress, both in our U.S. representatives as well as in the Senate. And they can try to blame the president all they want. Half this nation, no matter who the president is, half the people voted and supported for Bush. Half of them hated Bush. Half of them loved Clinton. Half of them hated Clinton. Half of us loved Obama. Half of us hated Obama. And here we are again now with President Trump. But the problem is, it doesn't matter. The president can only be there for a max of 8 years. 8 years, that's it. And they're only one piece of a 3-branch government system. And right now, one of those branches is completely broken, and it has been for quite a while now, and that's Congress. They can't work together. They fight continuously. One of the biggest things was immigration. Immigration has been a problem in this country forever. I remember being a little kid when President Reagan was in office, and immigration was one of the top items. It goes back and forth, back and forth. They never fix it. And to me, fixing it is to have a moral and just system that makes sense, that's fair and understandable, so that people can navigate it without spending $15,000, $20,000, taking 15, 20 years, and needing so many attorneys and lawyers just to figure it out. It's not hard to fix it. But honestly, I think sometimes our Congress doesn't want to fix these problems. They want us to fight over them back and forth, so that they can continue to be needed, so they continue to be elected. And then they get this money and they have all this power. They don't have power. We're the power. They've taken the power away from us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the sooner that we come to realize this, the better. We need to take control back and hold them accountable for what they've done and what they haven't done.
Now you're up against a giant here. You're basically the David in this scenario when it comes to Congress. Where do you think that money is coming from that they've accumulated throughout all of these years?
So I don't know. Sometimes it's just inside knowledge. Think about it. They know where the grants are coming from. They know. So if they get a grant, and I'm just speculating, I don't know, but you hear lobbyists are involved. And if somebody knows that a grant is coming so a building can be built, or certain real estate market is going to go higher, or if you buy this piece of property because they're going to be building that later on, I just think there's a lot of knowledge in that. Even honestly, just fundraising for a campaign.
Right.
If I'm a big company, who am I going to give the money to for their campaign? Am I going to give it to an incumbent who might then possibly give me a favor one of these days? Or
Right.
am I going to give it to somebody else who is a nobody?
Right.
And so they get this campaign donation. My campaign, my opponent outspent me 37-1 in 2018. And he's on track for doing that again. He spent upwards of close to $1 million.
Now that's Jim McGovern, for those that don't know, in Massachusetts.
Yeah, and I spent 30,000 last time. This time I'm spending maybe 5,000 or 10,000. That's a lot of money to me, and I'm getting donations and I'm doing very well. I'm very fiscally conservative. How can you spend $1 million on these campaigns?
Right.
Where does that money even come from? And they start talking about millions of dollars the way normal people talk about hundreds of dollars.
Right.
And I think that's why term limits are so important.
Right.
They need to be down there long enough to figure it out and to be able to get a good job done for us. But once you're inside that DC Beltway, all of a sudden, like I said, you're dealing in billions and trillions of dollars. How can you possibly relate to just regular people that are running businesses, that are working to take care of their families? That there's Jim McGovern has been in Congress over 23 years. He says he's from Worcester, but he's lived in DC over 20 years. His kids went to private DC schools.
Right.
How does he even know what's happening in our school districts or in our local businesses, on the ground in every town, in Auburn, Oxford, Worcester, Grafton, where I live. So that takes away the whole point of our government. We're supposed to be represented by one of us, by somebody that knows what it's like to live here and be here. He hasn't lived here for a couple decades.
Right. Now, we've discussed the term limits, which is something that's really important to me for the exact same reason. Now, when it comes to what's happening with current events, when it comes to the BLM, QAnon, I just did a podcast actually covering the truth about BLM, because I believe that a lot of people, they just say BLM and they don't even research what is really going on, what is really behind that. And that actually has to do with Jim McGovern to an extent, because BLM has Marxist leaders. Jim McGovern, from what we have discussed before, has studied or had ties with, who was it? Did you say that was it Castro?
Oh, he's been, well, definitely Fidel Castro, but also even predating that, down in El Salvador, with the Colombian the revolution down there, again, decades and decades ago. But he's on record for having a history of actually supporting the Marxist rebels that were working against the United States interest in Colombia. You know,
Now,
it's absolute insanity.
this is what I don't understand is why haven't these because the only way that you can get into like there's only like 3 different stipulations for you to actually run. It's like age, where you live, well, 2, right? I believe so. Age and where you live. There's no like track record. They don't take into account, has there been any kind of international treason, corruption? They need to be held accountable. Those things really do need to be looked at when it comes to running for Congress. And when you tell me that background about him, it blows my mind, because now we're seeing the fruit of that happen within our own streets. So tell me a little
Oh
bit
yeah,
about,
you know,
yeah,
we knew, you know, people know that about Bernie Sanders. People know that and somehow accepted about the squad.
mm-hmm.
You know, Jim McGovern was the squad decades before the squad was the squad, you know. And what you were just saying, I've never really thought about that before, but if I go to apply for a job, I need a background check,
Right.
right? But that being said, we have freedom in this country, and we have freedom to pick and choose who we best feel represents who we are. It's just unfortunate that, you know, we need to be more responsible. We need to be more responsible for understanding who our candidate is, what their history was. And now it's easier than ever to get on, you know, Google and just do a quick little search
Mm-hmm.
to find this information out. But we're busy, you know, we're busy at home, we're busy with kids, we're busy at work. And they take advantage of that, and next thing you know, you hear this wonderful commercial. You know, Jim's last time, and I'm sure he'll do it this time too, he came out with these great you know, radio ads that made it sound like he was the nicest, most bipartisan person that wanted to bring civility you know, back to DC. And if you don't know the history, he actually sounded pretty nice on the radio ad. And so shame on us for allowing this, that this is on, it's our responsibility to become better educated voters.
Right.
And we're not, you know. And I don't have the ability to, you know, do the television ads to force kind of spoon feed people information. And we shouldn't have to be, you know. We need to take more responsibility. It's perfect what you're doing, you know. You're reaching out, you're trying to help, you're trying to educate people. At the same token, you know, some of that has to come from us ourselves to be better educated, to make this, you know, it's one Google search, you know, Jim McGovern, Colombia, Wall Street Journal,
Right.
and all that history pops up. You know, Jim McGovern, Cuba, it all comes up. And I think a lot of times, just like so many situations, but our politicians have really taken advantage of us, and they've broken a trust. We should be able to trust them, but we should also be able to trust our journalists and our press. And we're finding out more and more we can't trust anybody,
Right.
but we need to be able to trust ourselves, and we need to be able to check, double check, communicate, look at all, you know, as many sides as we can to make they're important decisions. And we've kind of, I know even for me, you know, years ago, I didn't pay much attention either. And I'm hoping that as more and more of this craziness is happening, I hope more people are starting to pay attention. Because we're responsible for this. You know, we're either going to let it happen or we're going to do something about it. And I'm just trying to give us an option to do something about it.
What has definitely taken the place of the personal responsibility to educate, go to a library, I mean, even just going on the internet, is absolutely 100% social media. Social media has been the poster board, like propaganda poster board for 2020 or for the year two, you know what I mean? So
I think it's been for a lot longer.
yeah, for a long
Looking
time.
back at things, the news media has been very biased for a long time. It's gotten worse and worse. But people told me that probably, 10, 15 years ago, how biased the media was. And I just didn't notice. I was busy, being a soccer mom, and we have busy lives. But we're here now. We're at these crossroads of some very, very polarizing ideological differences in our country. It could get extremely bad if we're not educated and making good decisions, better decisions.
Right. Now, when it comes to some of the policies that you're in favor of, could you discuss them, such as, when it comes to immigration, everything that people need to know in a nutshell, what you're for and what you're against? I don't know.
I know in a nutshell, that's always the key part.
But it's important.
Fundamentally, the Constitution. I think a lot of times people think the Constitution is written as a way of like monitoring us, as it's policing the people. And it's not. What people need to understand is that Constitution is ours. And what it does is it polices our government. It protects us from the tyranny of the government. And with everything that's happening right now with the coronavirus and the overstepping, when they close the churches, you can't close a church. That's in the Constitution, that we have the ability not only to choose which religion we want to practice, but to practice it is our right.
Right.
That's in our Bill of Rights, and our founders knew how important that was. Now, that doesn't mean that our government can't help educate us and advise us. But when it comes to our fundamental rights, those were given to us by God. Those weren't given to us by our government to pick and choose which ones we're allowed to do and when.
Right.
And that's something that I take very, very seriously, that every decision that is ever made has to be made knowing what that Constitution is and how that is protecting us from our government. It's not allowing us certain things that we're allowed to do.
Right.
So first and foremost is putting that Constitution first, no matter what. That has to be the key in maintaining our freedoms and our liberties, which makes us that separates us from every other country that's ever existed before, is that Constitution. So putting that first and foremost, which has been neglected so badly, especially over the last few months, I think is extremely important. I think Massachusetts should become really a leader in immigration reform. Everybody talks about immigration reform, but they've never done anything. Here in Massachusetts, we have a lot of H-1B visas, people that are here and, working in healthcare, working in computer industry, scientists, a lot of people from other country having some very high-end jobs that they've come in and qualified for. We also have 100 colleges and universities throughout this state. So people that are here from other countries that are on student visas. And a lot of times those visas expire and there's really not a lot of follow-up for what to do. So your H-1B visa, you've been here, you want to stay, you want to do it the right way, but the fact is the right way is extremely difficult and cumbersome and expensive. And so I think that it's our responsibility here in Massachusetts to say, okay, let's do this. Let's make it to where you earn it, that there is a process to come, that nobody can cut in line. We police it. We make it extremely fair and moral and just, but we make it to where it's understandable and attainable. and fair. And fair means that across the board, that you don't cut in lines, that you know, we treat people with respect and we treat people equally. I think that's something that needs to, again, in Massachusetts, we should take point on that and just make that happen. It's not, I don't see how it's so hard. It seems like we can't go, if I wanted to go to, you know, Canada and I'm going to go move to Canada, I can't just pack my stuff up and go. They have a process that I need to follow, and I respect that. We need to have a same process that's followable, is that a word? But that's just better, you know, that's understandable and not easy. I'm not saying it should be easy, but it should be attainable. And I would definitely want to put that high on the list. Another thing, I don't know if you follow or if your audience follows Dr. Ben Carson.
Oh, yeah. I've read his book. Love him.
And he's working for, you know, the Department of Urban Development, HUD, and he's got this program that they've really been working hard at, discovering opportunity zones throughout the country. And once you're designated as an opportunity zone, you qualify for different grants and different monies and support from the federal government to help build a project. And that project is mainly there to help develop an area, to help bring business to an area, to help bring jobs to an area. In District 2, we have eight designated opportunity zones. They're in Orange and Athol, in Leominster and Webster and Worcester, I believe Spencer. So we have these already designated opportunity zones where our congressman, he's choosing to fight and work against the administration, where if we had somebody actually working for us, we could be targeting these areas and actually developing these areas, you know, working to identify opportunities. You know, that's what it's called, an opportunity zone, to find out how can we leverage the support of the federal government to help bring jobs, businesses, you know, to grow these areas. Just in Worcester itself is the largest city. It's the second largest city in all of New England. It's the biggest city in our district. 20% of the population just in Worcester makes less than $15,000 a year.
Wow.
It's horrible. Yeah. And they have 10 colleges and universities in Worcester. So these kids, they go through school, they have all these wonderful degrees and potential, but we don't have jobs for them to fill.
Right.
So they all move away. Right? And so we're left with service industry jobs, which are okay, but they're usually lower paying jobs. You know, where if we could bring some industry back, bring some manufacturing back. Manufacturing is a wonderful trade. If you can learn a trade and you're making, you know, $20, $25, $30 an hour, that is a much better situation than working 3 jobs, making a minimum wage and still not being able to make ends meet. Right. And those are the kind of real world situations that we're in. And there's things we can do about it. And they're not being done, and they haven't been done for over, you know, 23 years now.
Wow.
Right? It's like low-hanging fruit. It's not hard. It's
very
a lot
simple.
of work, but it's possible. Right. And to think that we have a guy in there right now that he's a constant victim. All he does is, you know, blame the president for everything. You know, he's been in there 23 years. Trump's only been in office 3.5. Right. What has Jim McGovern done the other 20 years? Right. You know, he's been in there for both Democrat presidents and Republican presidents. He's been in there for majorities and minorities. He's been in there the whole time. He hasn't been able to accomplish what we need him to be able to accomplish. Right. It's that simple.
Now, for people that are saying, because I've gotten this question multiple times, you know, they're saying, you know, they don't care to actually vote in the next election because they're electoral votes. That's not, they say that the primary is where it's at. What do you have to say to that?
Well, it is for the presidency,
Mhm.
but for my vote, it's one vote, one voice,
Right.
and every vote matters.
Right.
We don't have an electoral college for local elections.
Right.
It's 1-to-1. And honestly, again, what I would tell people is everything's about the president, but that president, again, if Trump wins office again, it's only 4 more years. It goes by very fast.
Yeah, it does.
If Biden wins, 4 years, we're talking about a whole branch of our government that is completely dysfunctional. And again, these long-term career politicians that are getting rich off of our tax dollars while they're not even working for us, and our guy doesn't even live here.
Right.
So it's extremely important to vote, and he assumes that everything's fine. Well,
Right.
you know what? It's not fine. It's not fine when, again, we have 8 opportunity zones in our district. When 20% of our population is making less than $15,000 in our biggest city. Worcester itself was the top 5 most homeless students, like little kids. Look it up.
Wow.
Top 5 in the whole nation for homeless students in Worcester, Massachusetts. That's horrible.
Yeah.
And this is all before COVID.
Right.
Now that COVID's here and our restaurants are closing down and the businesses are closing down, it's going to be worse than it's been in a long time unless we actively do something to make it better. And
now tell me, when was the point you decided that you were going to run?
Oh gosh, back in 2015, I was working with a patient. I was working on his knee, and we were talking about the primaries, and he got very, very upset. And his name was Alexander, and he was probably in his mid-70s or so. And I said, Alexander, what's wrong? Why are you so upset? And he said, Tracy, my wife and I defected to the United States from Russia in 1979. He said, we left everything and sacrificed everything to come to the United States. And he told me how hard it was because he had to come up through, he went through Italy and then all through Europe. It took him and his wife so much effort and sacrifice to come here. And he said, I'm watching this and I'm seeing what's happening to our country, and they're trying to make it just like what I left in Russia. And I said, what? I didn't know. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, listen to what they say. And he gave me a few names. He told me to research Saul Alinsky.
Mm-hmm.
He told me about George Soros. Mm-hmm. And I trusted him to listen. He didn't force feed me anything. He just gave me a few names. And he said, Tracy, this country is the best country in the whole world. And he knew. He came from Soviet Union. He came from, this communistic area and sacrificed everything to be here. And he loved everything about this country and what it afforded him. And so I went home, and just in one weekend, I started researching, who is this Saul Alinsky guy? Who is George Soros? What does he mean? And by the end of the weekend, I knew what he meant. And I just woke up, and it scared me. And I was like, you know what? No, I love my country just as much. And just like I did with that Medicare fraud, I knew something wrong was happening, and I couldn't sleep at night. And I know I just got to do everything I possibly can to fight against it and to keep our country the way it is.
That's awesome. Now tell the people where to find you. How can they donate? How can they help? Because you're the underdog in this situation when it comes to the financial side of things, because you're dealing with.
Oh, I'm the underdog in every situation. I'm working full time. I
Yeah.
have a small business. We had to close because the virus. We were closed for 3 months, and so I had to open back up from scratch. So I've been working to do a startup again. So I'm working full time. I'm running a campaign. You can find me at online. It's tracyforcongress.com. TRACYFOR. TracyForCongress.com. Biggest following is probably on Facebook, just because that's where it's easiest for me to communicate very quickly and do a post. So that's at Tracy Lovvorn for Congress, TracyLovvorn, Tracy Lovvorn for Congress. I'm on Twitter as well, Tracy, I think with the number 4, Tracy Lovvorn for Congress. But yeah, social media is really all I have, as far as you're not going to see a Tracy commercial, on TV. It's hard to get out there. It does take a lot of money, but we're getting the yard signs out. We have little handouts we're passing out. We're going to a lot of these, Back the Blue rallies and that kind of thing, because, without law and order, we need a moral and just society, and to keep it that way, we need law and order. It's that simple. It really is. So whatever this nonsense they're talking about with defunding the police, what you were talking about with BLM, it's just so negative. Look at the simplest thing I could say about this election is there's 2 sides. One side is honoring our country, smiling, hugging each other, waving our flag, standing for our flag, respecting law and order, respecting our police and fire and our first responders, and just being so, just loving, our country we want to keep it this way for all of us, for every single person that loves our country, just like you and me and everyone. And then this other side that seems to almost hate our country. They talk bad about it. They look at every negative thing. They're literally, protesting and looting and burning and defunding the police. For the 4th of July, they called our 4th of July a white supremacist holiday. What does that even mean? I don't know what they're doing. I don't understand these 2 sides and how it's difficult to choose, quite frankly. One side is tearing down statues, one side is burning and looting. We just had two LA sheriffs, shot point blank.
Yeah.
That's not the country that I live in. That's not the country that I'm going to live in. And I'm going to do everything possible to make sure that doesn't happen.
Right. So go to your website, Facebook.
Yep, TracyForCongress.com, Tracy Lovvorn for Congress.
And make sure you make a donation. She'll bring you a sign, just like she did for me. Some bumper stickers, make a donation.
We'll get a sign out to you. Any donation is great. Whether it's $5, I'm asking for $20.20. You get a sign, a couple bumper stickers, and then that helps buy a couple extra signs.
Yeah.
Signs aren't cheap. The little stand is $1, right? Yep. And the sign itself is another $5. So just for a sign is anywhere between $5 and $7. It's crazy. And then people will steal them. They'll burn, they throw them away. It's childish, but it all adds up. So somebody can do, and you know what, I always tell people too that, donations are always appreciated, but they're not necessary. If you're in a good spot, yes, we'll get a sign out to you. We'll get bumper stickers out to you, anything you need to help. This isn't Tracy's campaign. This is our campaign. And I've heard other people say that, but I don't think anybody's ever meant it as much as it's true. I am working, and the only way we could do this is if we do it together.
That's right. So make sure you guys share this podcast with as many people as you can. Subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to YouTube as well. Share with as many people as possible. We know that there's a silent majority in Worcester right now, especially within the Hispanic community. They haven't spoken up for whatever reason, their jobs, families, but we know they're out there. So make sure you show your support in any way you can.
We didn't talk about this too much, but and I won't go down too far, but if I see everybody pretty the same. and that's not good. It is good, but at the same time, people want to be, seen individually.
Mhm.
So all I know that I can speak to with when it comes to Hispanic population, or what do you guys, what's this Latinx?
Latinos. I
Do
don't
people like
claim the
this
Latinx.
Latinx?
I
I
don't do
don't.
that. We're not
Yeah,
on that
I
level.
don't, that was new, but my history, I was born in Southern California. So I know a lot of Mexican Americans, and that's a little different because I think out here, a lot of people come more from the Dominican,
Mhm.
and they come up from Cuba, and you get a lot Puerto
Puerto
Rican
Rican.
Americans who are already Americans.
Hmm.
Eh, But what I do know from the people I know in the Latin communities, typically, you get a lot of Catholics, a lot of times, hard workers, God-fearing people
Hmm.
that are all about family,
Yep.
and I don't see how that jives with what's going on on the other party right now. I
Mhm.
just don't. Not when they're killing babies after they're born and calling that health care. Not when it comes to burning our flag, not when it comes to celebrating, and what I mean by celebrating the separation of families, they incentivize people to get more help, when you're divorced, when you're separated from your family. And
Right.
it's just a terrible, terrible system that they've put in place. And you see it all over very strong Democrat cities.
Right.
And if you see where all the biggest problems are, they're in these Democrat cities that have been Democrat for 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Right.
It's Portland, it's Seattle, it's Chicago, and Worcester, the same thing. Again, it's the second largest city, and we have so much problems that, you know what, maybe it's time to try something different and make some changes for the better, for our families, for our communities, for, you know, just for our hearts. And I just think it's time for change.
Absolutely. Latinos are, I think, at heart conservative, old school Latinos. Like we were raised conservative. We do believe in the family unit and we have faith. Most of us come from some kind of a faith background, which when I actually went on to the BLM website to do research for my podcast, they actually say that they want to dismantle the Western family unit. They don't
Yeah,
support it at all. And so, I mean, it's right there. It's right there.
right.
So, I mean,
It's
when you think
horrible.
about the things that you discussed about, in order for you to get welfare, there can't be a man in the house. Those
Right.
are the systems that are corrupt, in which they promote the dismantle of the family unit. And Latinos, they don't come from that kind of a space. Most of us come from, family oriented backgrounds.
I mean, they say that, every research study that you can look at, you could see the success, and no matter how you measure success, I'm not talking just financial success, but just a success of a family or a person comes from a family unit. It
Right.
just does.
Right.
And no matter how you describe your family, there's lots of different ways to describe a family, but it's just so important. And again, to have a moral and just society that's ruled by fair and just laws, that's what's gotten us all the successes that we've ever had as a country. And to tear that away just doesn't make any sense.
Right. Well, at this point, we're not voting for people. We're voting for systems. We're voting for different types of government.
Right.
Um, so we appreciate you so much. I appreciate you coming on again. I know that we had some
Please let
technical
anybody, if
difficulties.
anybody has questions, they are more than welcome. You know this. You can message me on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
If you call the contact phone number on my website, oftentimes I just pick up the phone. I'm not hard to get a hold of. And I've had wonderful conversations with people because people have, and rightfully so, this is a job interview. And you're looking to hire somebody. If you have questions, call me. I'll follow up, I'll talk to you, I'll come meet you. We can do a Zoom call.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I appreciate you. Make sure you go out on our website, on Facebook, follow and share with as many people as you can. Get the word out. We're fighting for, right now, the freedom of this nation. So it's not something to be taken lightly.
It's
And
unbelievable.
people that are stepping up, as brave as Tracy is, to, you know, counteract everything that's what's happening today, want to make sure that we back her. So
I got my armor on, you guys. Just push me through. Push me through.
armor of God. All right, Tracy,
All
thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you and see you soon.